A leading Romanian candidate for the country's upcoming presidential elections has now had his ban confirmed by the Constitutional Court. He will not be able to run in the election. He had been espousing more or less pro-Kremlin talking points with respect to Ukraine and the Russo-Ukrainian war. So what does all this mean for Romania, its position, and most importantly for this channel, Ukraine, as we go into the spring of 2025. Salut, my name is Connor Klein, an expert in international relations. I've been living in Ukraine for many years, speak both Ukrainian and Russian. Actually, I also speak Romanian, which is slightly pertinent for this particular video. So I'm here to give you a more insightful and nuanced take on the happenings of the Russo-Ukrainian war. And neighboring Romania is also a significant factor in what has been going on. Călin Georgescu, if you think back to before the new year, he had come from nowhere to win the first round, or come first in the first round of the Romanian presidential elections. He was then in the polls leading for the second round runoff when the election was cancelled by the courts in Romania amidst allegations of Russian interference and illegal funding. Now, the election is now due to take place in May. However, Georgescu was actually arrested on his way to register for the elections, and he has been charged with several things. Just read out a few of them here. He's got a 6-count indictment against him. Charges include incitement to actions against the constitutional order and lying about campaign funding. That was obviously pertinent to what happened back in December, and initiating a fascist organization. So according to law enforcement, Georgescu used over €1 million of undeclared funds and has been involved in neo-legionnarism, which is like from World War II when Romania had a fascist / National Socialist government. It was somewhere in between. It was called legionnarism, and they were allied with Nazi Germany in World War II. It says here, Romanian neo-fascist movement that draws its ideology from the country's Iron Guard militant group active in the run-up to World War II. Okay, so Georgescu is denied any wrongdoing. There was this extraordinary rise from almost nowhere in Romania when he ran in the first round of the elections, when they were originally scheduled to take place back in 2024. He's relatively unknown in Romanian political circles, running as an independent and polling in the single digits, and suddenly he got over 20% of the vote. And a lot of that came from a phenomenal TikTok campaign, and he did very well with the Romanian diaspora in Western Europe, which is also a bit of a surprise. And he is unashamedly pro-Kremlin. He denies it. I shouldn't say unashamedly, but he's basically, with respect to the Russo-Ukrainian war, he has been outspoken in outlining a new path for Romania and calling Ukraine a fictitious state, saying that he wouldn't allow any more support for Ukraine from Romania, that he wouldn't allow even Ukraine to export its produce through the Black Sea port in Romania. I believe they're exporting out of Constanța. They probably bring it up the river in Ismail, the Danube first, and then down through other parts of Romania. So basically, he had a particularly hostile approach to Ukraine, and that obviously coincides with what the Kremlin wants to hear. There was allegations that Russia basically directly interfered in the election to promote him and try to get a pro-Russian candidate. He says he's not actually pro-Russian, that he's pro-American and pro-Trump. And that is something that's very interesting that has started to emerge in the last few months with the new Trump administration. When J.D. Vance gave his speech at the Munich Security Conference, probably just over a month ago at this point, he departed from the normal kind of speech, which is to emphasize the strength of the NATO alliance. And J.D. Vance described Russia and China as not the main challenges to Europe, the main threats, but that European democracies are. And he took the case of this election in Romania being cancelled. And that is an interesting development, that the US from before would not have been allied with such a political figure who's so openly citing pro-Kremlin talking points and advocating for Russia's interests, and has all these alleged associations with Russia. It's also, if you get into what the charges involve, the militant group he's involved with also is alleged to have contacts in Russia and be associated with Russia. So that is quite extraordinary. And it kind of muddles the waters quite a bit for Romanian voters who are traditionally going to be quite pro-Romanian. Romania was behind the Iron Curtain and under communism with a brutal dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, until he was actually executed after the revolution. He was executed after a kangaroo court, to be frank, in 1989. Late 1989 was probably the bloodiest end to a communist regime in Europe. Many people died, hundreds and hundreds of people. And it's all actually still a bit of a mystery. Anyways, I digress slightly. So Ceausescu, he basically was arrested when he was on his way to register. Then he was actually banned from taking part in these new elections by the Bureau Electoral Central, so that would be the Central Electoral Office. And now that ban has been upheld. He appealed to the Romanian Constitutional Court, and that ban has been upheld. So he cannot run in the elections. So that means that he will be excluded, obviously. And he was getting a lot of support from other parties that maybe aren't as openly or as pro-Kremlin as Ceausescu has been. And he's given many interviews where he's outlined, oh, this is not, like I'm taking a few quotes in isolation. He even gave interviews to foreign journalists in English outlining his policies that would be in favor of Russia and against Ukraine should he have won the election. There are other parties that have backed him. He used to be a member of a party called, it's known as AUR, which means gold in Romanian. It stands for, the letters stand for Alianța pentru Unirea Românilor, which is the Alliance for the Unification of Romanians. And it is an irredentist party that wants to take parts of, or integrate parts of other countries. For example, in Ukraine, there are regions that have been in Romania in the interbellum period, so between World War I and World War II, where there's still a minority of Romanian speakers that actually been there. My lifestyle channel and film there. So you got Chernovtsi Oblast, you got, I think it's called Herta or Herza, which is a little region, and then you obviously have Moldova, the actual country Moldova. They want to have that all as part of Romania. So you can see how that would overlap in terms of rhetoric with, say, Donald Trump at the moment, where he's talking about making Canada the 51st state and Greenland, annexing it. So even though the US hasn't invaded those countries, unlike Russia, which has invaded Ukraine to try and change the same ends, they do have these irredentist streak. So that party that he actually left, and there's a lot of speculations why he's left, a lot of accusations he's actually too extreme, that he was supporting the legionnaire part of Romania's history, which was the Romanian fascist-like regime that they had up in the run-up to World War II and during World War II to a certain extent, before they switched sides. Towards the end of World War II, Romania then switched to the Allies. So with that irredentism and that echoing both what is happening in DC and also obviously what Russia has been advocating for, they will probably run a candidate who will replace Ceausescu and appeal to more or less the same part of Romanian society. The leader of that party is George Simenon. So there is an expectation that he will now be the candidate to represent those points of view. So at the end of the day, Canon Georgescu will not run in the elections, but a reasonably similar candidate, maybe one who's not considered quite as extreme, maybe a little less extreme, because Georgescu left his party. He will probably run in his place as their main candidate. And Romania has a two-round system, so basically the two leading candidates in the first round, if no one gets 50%, which is probable, they will then have a runoff. So it's pretty likely that Simenon would make the second round in light of how many votes his political party gets and other allied parties. He actually only finished fourth in the original election because Georgescu basically came from nowhere and took a lot of his voter base. So probably the same interest will end up being on the ballot in the second round in May. However, it will not be Georgescu. And this does, of course, raise questions about the legitimacy of Romania's election. If a leading candidate ends up being banned, being accused of illegal campaign funding and basically being sponsored or promoted by by Russia, and to a certain extent, you could say the United States with this new administration. So I'll leave it at that for today's video. Just an update on that. I did comment on it before the original elections when they were taking place late last year here on the channel. I got a lot of comments under those videos saying that, apparently from Romanians saying who support Georgescu, saying Georgescu is not pro-Kremlin, he's just pro-Romanian. When, I mean, he continued to outline very clear pro-Kremlin policies that could have been written by the Russians themselves. So he's definitely very aligned with that line of thought. However, as I've said in this video and come to other videos, the world has changed, and US foreign policy has dramatically changed in the last 2 months. And actually, he's also, at this point, to a large extent, aligned with the new Trump administration, which obviously complicates the situation in terms of seeing where they fit on the grander chessboard in geopolitics in 2025. So drop a comment down below. Even if you're Romanian and you support Georgescu, let me know your thoughts about how I've dealt with this topic in this video. And I will see you in the next one. La revedere, as they say in Romanian.